Good afternoon. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to some, I hope. So very happy to be here and to introduce this BBS event. Lila Discala, J&J BBS President. Very happy to be hosting this at ETH. Thank you also to Jack Kuipers, who's made this possible to be here in person, at least some of us. I would really like personally to thank all the organizers, in primis Marcel, who has done a great job in bringing these speakers together for an event on a topic that's extremely relevant for us statisticians and quantitative experts. And I really want to thank all the speakers who join us here today. So without further ado, I leave the event to be opened by Marcel.
Thank you very much, Lila. Very warm welcome to all of you virtually and in the room from my side as well. We started organizing this seminar because we all experienced the rise of ChatGPT about 2 years ago. None of us, or almost none of the organizers, are experts in AI, so we were just very curious about it. We wanted to set up a cool event. We tried it obviously ourselves. I've personally had my successes and my frustrations when it just hallucinated. Most recently, some restaurant recommendations to me. So we're really curious also how we can apply it in our daily jobs. And we've all tried it, but there remain a lot of questions. And I'm very pleased that we have a great panel of speakers today. And now I'd really like to move a slide forward. Okay. So I want to repeat the big thank you. All the speakers here, they said yes, and I'm really pleased we have representatives from all the 3 big pharmas here. We have 2 neuroradiologists, we have an academic professor, we have a regulator, so it's really awesome. And I would also like to thank all the organizers. In particular, I'd like to thank Jack, who made it possible that we can host it in this beautiful location here. I just want to quickly say a few words about registrations. So we've had actually 545 registrations, lots of registrations. It's a free event. So the majority of people are statisticians, but we have a good number of clinicians, epidemiologists, and I think we didn't choose the selection of expertise very well because we had a lot of other people. A lot of people from pharma, but lots of people from academia and other places as well. And I'm very pleased that we have members from all the continents except for Antarctica, and we're working on that one. So quite a few people from the US and from obviously most from Switzerland. And if you think this map is really cool, then this was done with the help of ChatGPT because I didn't know how to do maps in R before that. So it is very useful. So without further ado, let's go to the program. We split it into 2 halves. The first half is focusing more on automation, and the second half is focusing more on using it for actual science, both very important. And the first half will be by pharma speakers. And without further ado, I introduce our first speaker, which is Ercan Stikir, correct, right? He's a very experienced data scientist working at Roche and is working heavily on making us all proficient in AI at Roche. Over to you, Ercan. And while you come up, just a few housekeeping rules. First of all, please don't bring any food in this room, and please don't stand up in the back or something. There's some security protocol for this room. For virtual participants, please put any questions you have into the chat. And we have multiple people monitoring the chat, so your questions also get asked. And we'd like to focus initially on, after each talk, on short questions specific to what is being talked about. And then for broader philosophical questions, we do that in the panel discussion at the very end. Good. With that, over to you, Ercan.
Wait, I should be now on speaker. Yes, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here today and looking forward to bring you some insights about what we are doing at Roche with GenAI. My name is Ercan. I'm a data scientist in PRED, so pharma research and early development. And we're trying to bring all the new technologies in our daily work. And with that, I want to showcase one of the power of AI, and I will hand over to one of my AI colleagues.
Hey zusammen, willkommen im BBS-Seminar AI in Clinical Research and Drug Development.
Hey Salma, could you switch to English, please?
Oh, sorry, of course, Ercan. I'm just excited to be here in Basel at the Department of Biosystems Science and Engineering today. Let's talk about something that's becoming an integral part of our everyday lives, especially in the world of drug development, artificial intelligence. As you're probably aware, AI has made its way into daily conversations, and it's no longer just a buzzword. We see its influence across a variety of areas. It's a regular feature in mainstream media, where AI's potential and its risks are constantly discussed. Our specialized domain journals highlight how AI is transforming the research landscape. In top-tier scientific journals, you'll find AI being explored as a powerful tool to drive innovation. Even the business world is embracing AI, using it to reshape industries and create new opportunities. And within our own company, AI is setting trends, pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve. On our commutes, we tune into podcasts, discussions, and interviews where experts dissect the role of AI in healthcare and beyond. Perhaps most significantly, we see regulatory agencies like the FDA seriously considering how AI can improve safety and efficiency in drug and device development. This interconnected web of AI's influence is transforming how we approach drug discovery, development, and everything in between. So let's dive in and explore how we too can harness the power of AI. So what is this black box, AI? What is GenAI and what is a LLM? Ercan, may you can take over.
Thank you, Selma. So let's start with some simple things about what is GenAI, what is LLM, what's the LMM. And with that, I think everyone hear about the buzzword AI. In this big bubble of AI, we have the machine learning, where we use pattern recognition. Then we go further. We start with neural networks, with deep learning. These days, we spend a lot of time with GenAI. At the moment, everything is GenAI. And in this little bubble, we focusing in our daily work with kind of two models, which is one, the large language models, which are able to kind of understand natural language. And the other ones are the large multimodal models, which are able to understand different kind of data. I prepare a lot of slide deck to really explain from the embedding model up to transformers, encoder, decoder, but I don't want to bother you with that. I keep it simple. So let's think about the sentence, the boy went to. So that's my context. We put it to LLM. What LLM is doing, he's predicting with probability statistics the next word. And the word with the highest probability will be chosen. And it starts from the beginning. This is the magic behind GPT 3.5. Nowadays, we're using multi-models. That means they're able to use different contents. For example, I put the same kind of text, a cat playing in the park. Let's put the cute image of a cat. We feed that with a new model, Dolly, for example, and we can generate a cute cat playing in the park. That's quite nice. Behind their transformer models, we can go further. We can make a video out of it, just with the image. Everything what you see is AI generated. I just write a cat playing in the park and Google a cute cat picture. And the rise is there. So you see the exponential growing of the last 2 years. LLMs are everywhere. And GPT-3, I think, started the boom with 135 billion parameters. These days at Roche, we are working with 1,500 billion parameter models like Gemini Pro. But let's go for some ideas why we need this technology. What is the benefit for drug development? Just think about that. Our daily work is kind of really simple scheme here, the workflow. We get data, external data, internal data, and we have to clean it. Data is never clean. I think everyone is aware of that. Then we start modeling with this data, figure out some insights about that, and the most annoying part is reporting and QC. So now think about, you have a AI bot. I think everyone here used ChatGPT. Did you ever ask him to clean up a data set? Or maybe ask him to, help with implementation and model selection, which can also be quite powerful these days with the new models. What we also can do, we can try to make some assumptions of testing and diagnostics. So these bots are really powerful. They have a lot of domain knowledge. And we can also use them for interpretation of images, what we are trying to do now. And last point, I think every human will agree that reporting is quite of a pain. So this is also one task that we can outsource to large language models because they're experts on text. So what we have in our department, we call the PMX bot. So for everyone who is not aware of PMX, these are the pharmacometricians. This is the science of quantifying drug efficacy, safety, and PK thoughts. So we are building kind of drug models to do, for example, population modeling and other kind of approaches with clinical data. As I mentioned before, normally we have our scientist who's starting in the traditional way to pull some data or get some data from our data scientist or public data from PubMed or the FDA or other authorities. And then with all this extracted data, they start reading the papers, plenty of pages. Then they start coding and going back to the study teams to report their insights of the data. Nowadays at Roche, we have kind of two new bots. One is the PMX bot, one is the Copilot Studio. It's a coding assistant that helps us. It's embedded everywhere in all IDEs like VS Code or RStudio. These are taking a lot of tasks from us. They're simple tasks, like changing a legend, for example, in coding tasks, or pulling information out of a lot of paper, which is done by bots. We can just upload the image, upload the paper, or just tell him, search for it, and he will extract the last 10 published papers. And then we are much quicker to going back to our study teams. A lot of theory, maybe I just showcase one nice thing that we are able to do. We can do a task that normally I would say 4 hours task, done in under 5 minutes. So, is it working? Yes. So here, for example, you have in one of the journals a paper about capecitabine, and in this paper embedded, we have the PDF with a compartment model. Our scientists are always interested in the PK, in the pharmacokinetic information, and the compartment model. These are our user interface. So we start simple. I ask him, how are you doing? He knows it's me. He tells me how I can help you today. And I always looking for pharmacometrics information. Now we'll ask him to extract this information about this paper. I want a brief summary of the study. I want the approach, the relevant PK parameters, and the underlying compartment model out of this PDF. And he starts immediately his work. So step by step, he's really going for all of the tasks or the prompts that we call them to extract the information. You can see here, I hope it didn't, yes. He starts with the first summary of the thing, the paper, the PK information with the deviations, the approach, the really relevant PK parameters because he knows which are the relevant ones, and the underlying compartment model. So when we have to always double check the output of AI, we never trust it 100%. So now we're looking here and see he's extracting the right paper. I mean, it's not a big surprise. So when we now double check the extracted PK parameters, because he's digitalizing the whole information from the PDF, we can see the rate constants, the elimination rates for the metabolites. 1-on-1 correct. Sometimes you do some rounding, but we're getting better. This is one of the old models. So he will ask me also to generate non-name code. Non-name code, for whom I'm not aware of, it's a really old Fortran code, which the model are using to run their ODEs and running the models. And we not train, but we give him the information about how he used it. Behind there is a RAG approach, retrieve augmented generation approach. That means we feed him with a lot of information that he can always cross-reference where he get this code templates. And then he start coding. Quite nice to know is that he has a quite huge memory. So the PK parameter that he extracted from the paper, he will already implement it by the code. So we can have the markdown file, we can copy that and go straight to our IDE and start coding. So this, normally someone would sit there and start building these blocks step by step. But now our little assistant is able to generate the draft of the code. I mean, fine-tuning is always important from the human. We always have to QC that. And it's also labeled that it's AI generated, because everything that's AI generated has to be labeled. At the end, you have the explanation of the code. I'm not good at none of them, so I prefer open source technologies. So I will ask him to use R with the ArmRG solve package, which is also allowing you to run these kind of approaches. And immediately he start to building the R code. He will use the same approach. He will define the model. And then he also extracting the same parameters that I had before from the paper, will just pass it by. I think everyone saw how GPT works, so it's not really magic anymore. But 2 years ago, mind-blowing. So we get used to it that we get information quite quickly. So same approach. We can now copy that. I can move to my RStudio, paste the plot. Let's make it bigger. And by the way, the whole video is not edited. It's real time. So the whole recording. As you can see, I can just compile my code, and here I get my output. So I see the Kopzabedin plasma concentration over time, but something is missing. So I will write a comment here. I will comment, please include also the metabolites, because I know there are some metabolites, and I get the code. So here, the new code bot is supporting us. He's generating the code, and when I compile that, I have the plot done in a few seconds. It takes me more time to write the prompt or the comment compared to him writing the code. So other example here, when I ask him, give me maybe the first 24 hours of the time concentration, he will generate the code or adjust the code in seconds. And here we go. I have my code. So this is available in all RStudio's IDEs, and we can use it. So let's go further. Different example that we are using now, newer technologies, newer models, is the reproducing of paper. I think everyone knows it's quite a difficult task. So here, I took also one of those PK, because we are really working in this pharmacokinetic environment. That's the reason I took one phase 1 study, where we have the 2 drugs, and just concentrating on this little table. So I don't give him any PDF, no information. I will just take this table image. So what I'm doing now here, you can see we are updating the tools. We're using different vendors. We are also working with them together to bring our solutions. So when I just copy paste or just do a screenshot of this table and pass it there and ask them, hey, could you maybe generate the concentration time profile that you see on the left from the document? So he never saw this information. He's not aware of this paper. What he's doing, he's digitalizing the information that he find in this image, or she, sorry, and generate this plot out of the box. And we can go further. So he will give me the same plot. I mean, it's not perfect, but I can still chat with it. That means I can use natural language to program these days. So we can go further and ask him, hey, maybe what about the AUC, the area under the curve? Can we also compute that? In the paper, it's given. We know the parameters. And it takes some time, but you tell me how he will compute that and run it in this bot. So we can, if we compare now the both results, we see they're quite similar. We have in the paper 94.34 for the drug A, and he computed 93.34. 93.34, yes. So it looks quite similar, but not correct. But what he's not aware of, that we exclude some subjects in the paper. So he just assume what he can do. That's the reason bots, in theory, are dumb. We have to give a lot of information. It's like talking with kids. You really have to be good in forming or putting the requirements, what you really want to. So in my daily work as a data scientist, I use it quite heavily. So these days, most of the tasks I outsource to my little AI bot. Oh, sorry. Is it working? I hope so. Okay, sorry. So another demo, simple one, where we have here from Novartis, the super nice markdown files with some demo data, how to build reports in the field of PK. There's a dummy data set, and you can see the most common concentration time plots, and also like covariate analysis, the effect of PK, everything is listed. So this is kind of the golden standard. Which we now can do is we can just take the raw file, so the data set as a CSV format. You can see here we have the subjects, the dose, the treatment, and the administration, and just to copy paste or drag and drop these days. So we can just drag and drop it to our environment. You will start analyzing the raw data. And then now we can just program, or let's say chat with our data. What we can ask, the first question, do ADI, so exploratory data analysis about the data set, what you can see already. A lot of information when I get raw data where I start to think about, okay, what are the covariates, what kind of columns are there? He's aware of that. So he's also able to make the labeling of the columns because we feed the information. He's aware of the CDIS standards, our clinical data standards that we have. He will tell me there are 700 rows, 50 columns, and in one column with the concentration I have 100 missing values. You always also do some correlations. He will tell me there's a correlation between the dose and the ID, but this is a dummy data set, so it's not a big surprise in this case. But as you can see, he already thinks as a data scientist, as a biostats. So he will try to do that because we give him the information how he has to react. We go further, we can ask him like simple things again. Concentration time profiles, we want to see the plots. Now he can just output that from the raw data. We can ask him, hey, maybe the y-axis, semilog would be nice. It's better for us, it's a human to read. The bot or the tools, they don't have issues to understand the data, they're machines. It's only for us humans. So with this technology, we humans are better in communicating with technology. That's the only thing that will get enabled. So you can see he will do everything what I'm asking. Normally you would ask a data scientist or you just code it by yourself. So when we ask for the mean plots of the dose per dose, you will do that immediately in a few seconds. So as soon as I have the data set, I can do whatever I want. I can see there's something missing. I can just write it down. Hey, the standard deviation is missing. Could you add it to the plot? And he will do that. So all the data manipulation is in the background. We don't see that anymore. So this is only one bot who's doing the tasks. We can go and ask him for gender. You will know, he knows or she knows where the gender is, in which column to look at. It's going to the sex column, to the matching of the data sets, and generating each of the plots for each of the concentration files. You always do it kind of interactive, which looks horrible, to be honest, but we can always switch them to the statistics view. It's quite nice. So it's a nice tool to have if you get the raw data set and just to play around with it. And what it also allows us, we can give this technology to people which are not IT people, so they can use it with their own. And I think this is what the power brings for our daily work. So we can go further, we can ask for the mean plots for each of the genders, and he will generate that. I figure out yellow was not the smartest choice here, but overall, all these plots normally would be requested to a data scientist. The scientist would go and ask to the data scientist, could you maybe implement that? And then, it took maybe 1 day or 2 days. No, it takes some seconds. And you can calculate, which allows us, normally, which is done by several departments, you can only do it by your own with only one bot. So you can extract the Cmax values. You can ask for a non-compartment analysis, which is quite common when you have clinical data for the process of the drug development. And he will run that. I mean, these values are not QC'd, not validated, but it's a good start to, share this information with your colleagues, start modeling approaches, see if the drug has any side effects, or we have to stop the trial. And there is really no limit. You can ask whatever you want. He will try to implement it or bring it to you. These are just some examples that I pull here. The biggest impact of GenAI is programming, and it will be crazy. So when I check the newest AI tools, for me, the top 3, I think maybe some of you also play with that, is Cursor AI, which implement your whole software packages by its own, Ada, and GitHub Copilot. GitHub was the #1 few months or years ago. Now we have much cooler tools. just to showcase the power of these tools, I have this ADA demo. So ADA is a large language model which runs on terminal. That means you are chatting with your terminal. You ask him to make a web page with the planets, the orbits, and you want to use the mouse cursor. He will do it in the template. He will generate the whole code and create the Git repo, and here we go. We have the HTML file with the prompt. Let's go with the real planets. It's a large language model. He's fed with a lot of data. He can adjust and bring the real sizes and the distance between the planets in the tool. I think because maybe I'm too old, but I love Snake, we can ask him to generate Snake. The whole game will be done by the large language model in few seconds. He will generate the data set, the code, the repo, upload, and you can just run it out of the command line. And here you go, we have the Snake game, which takes us few seconds to do it. Quite cool. Let's talk about the future. I mean, this sounds already futuristic, but let's see what the future horizon is bringing. But to be honest, it's not the future anymore. So nowadays, we talk about agents. Agents is a big thing. If someone is not familiar about the concept of agents, we use several bots and give them tools. That means every one of them has different tasks and can run different tools. One can compile R, the other one Python, non-NAM, or just QC documents. And all of that, it's in the background. And one additional big thing here, they are communicating between. We as a human, we don't see that anymore. So we only communicate with one bot. This is orchestrator. He will give all the feedbacks. So we ask him for a task. He will take the task, split it in simple tasks, and share it with the background. Sorry. This one sounds super futuristic, but last month, a Japanese research team published a paper about the golden standard of AI scientists. So these are agents which are extracting ideas from Google Scholar, writing an idea, starting the experiment, running the iteration by their own, and writing a whole scientific paper. The whole task is done by AI. There's no human in between. So this is the golden standard at the moment for AI scientists. And of course, we at Roche, we are trying to do. So this is our first prototype, because we see the pain of data cleaning. Nowadays, we are building our PMX Genie. This is kind of different agents which helping us to clean up the data. We give them the raw data, the SCTM files. If you're not aware of that, these are the table data that you get from our clinical data space. And we will ask them to give the step-by-step process, which is normally done by humans. So we give them or uploading the raw data, ask them, you want to have run now an NCA and write the plan for drug X. I mean, he will give me always a funny Chuck Norris joke, but after a few seconds, he's analyzing the raw data and writing an analysis plan for us, what we have to do. This task was done by humans before, still. The next step would be to write the specification, because a lot of covariants which our scientists need are somewhere in the data sets. So we have to go as a data scientist and search for them. Now we're outsourcing the test to agents. So when we ask him, hey, could we want to generate the ADNCA data sets, write a specification for us. So he has already the analysis plan. So what he's doing the same, telling us a joke, but afterwards, he is providing me the data specification. So I get information about the columns in each of the data tables that I receive, the type of the tables, and where I can find the information that I need from the analysis plan. So these are really variables that I need from run my models. But one, I think, big topic at the moment is also AGI. Marcel mentioned it will not come so quick, but I think we're not that far. Maybe a few thousand days, as you already heard from OpenAI last week. So just to tell you the concept of the AGI, so the artificial general intelligence means that you have an AI which is able to run every task that a human can do. For example, you have a super good biostats colleague, and you know everything about the domain. But if you ask him something about art, music, engineering, he can switch the domains without any retraining. That's AGI. 2 weeks ago, OpenAI published O1 model. We are already working with the O1 model, and we are quite impressed about the output. What it means, normally you put something in ChatGPT, you get a response. Nowadays, they think, or they do the reasoning. Here is a simple example that he when we ask a question, the input, he will reason the input, give the output, and put it in its turn two, where he started again, the reasoning. So it's kind of thinking. And after 3 turns, he will give me a much more clear output. That means the hallucination that you get normally with large language model will be reduced. And if you compare the benchmarks, I mean, we didn't test it quite intensive at the moment, but just from the OpenAI benchmarks, we can see that the new O1 models are outperforming the expert human in the PhD level of scientific questions. So we're at this stage at the moment. And this was a quite nice tweet I saw also last week or 2 weeks ago from a MD who's working on a major cancer treatment project, and he uses a O1 model to write the framework. And the model writes it under 1 minute. Not perfectly, but still quite impressive. But one thing that he mentioned is that also with his 30 years of experience, that the model was able to find some new ideas and new thoughts, but he never thought about that, which he can bring in the framework. And this just shows the power of this GenAI tools. And this is something that also just published last week, the 5 levels for OpenAI to go in this kind of new world. First, I think everyone is aware of the chatbots. We have them, we are using them. The second one was the reasoning that published last week. We have the agents. We are also working with them. They're not perfect, but they're getting better. The next step was the innovators. We're building tools or bots which bring innovation. And the last step, organization, where we have full organizations only run by AI bots. So this is kind of futuristic. Let's see. I wouldn't say this will come soon, but still, the technology is there. And with that, I really wrap up. And I think that we need the mindset change as humans. So we should stop rejecting this technology, because I know AI will always there, like years, but this one will have an effect. And we should not panic about that. So we will not be replaced by bots. I think we have to find a really positive mindset where we can see the benefit to using this technology. We will be much quicker. We have more time for real science and give the annoying task to outsource to bots. And with that, I hand over to Lara.
We are witnessing an era of rapid technological evolution. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, made a compelling statement. AI is not going to take your jobs. The person who uses AI is going to take your job. This highlights the imperative of integrating AI into our daily lives and professions. Instead of fearing job displacement, we should aim to embrace AI as a tool for enhancement and innovation. With that perspective, Ercan, let's see if you can answer the audience's questions without me ha-ha.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ercan. Really great to see your enthusiasm. And all these really cool demos. I saw there's one question in the chat already, but maybe we take one from the audience first. Please wait till you get the microphone from Jules.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was impressive to watch. I got a question about the PMX tool that you built. Can you elaborate how you built that? And the second question is, do you experience any differences in the model? I think you said you work with Gemini. And the third one is, how do you make sure that the data does not get out of the organization when you work with individual patient data, for example, but also the system is able to learn what you have already told him, for example, when you continuously work on a study?
Yes, good questions. I tried to start with the first one. So I think the basic concept is that because we're a big company, we're collaborating with Microsoft, which allows us to use the Azure AI endpoints, OpenAI, which we have, but we build our own RAG. So we built a vector database which we feed with our domain information, domain knowledge. And nowadays we're trying to build a whole vector database of whole Roche, so that we can embed it to each different bots. At the end, the knowledge is there, you put it on the context, and then you get the outputs without less hallucinations. Between the bots, I mean, we are working with Gemini because we get the approval for C4. That would also answer the third question, you got data privacy. We started the whole thing 2 years ago, where GPT was announced. We worked with GPT 3.5, and it took us 8 months to get the okay from legal and IT security. In this time, other companies, I mean tech companies, already using technology, but we have to wait. So we use it with dummy data. Nowadays, we can use it also with clinical data, but not with clinical data which is ongoing. That's not allowed. Only with local models. It means we're also hosting local models like Llama 3.1 and other models, but not with the big vendors. Did I miss any question?
No, thanks. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a second question here.
Hi, thank you very much. I guess what I took from your talk is that it's nothing to be embarrassed about to be using this. But we come from the medical field, and I think that it's hard for people to admit it now that they're using AI to either help plan their projects or to write their projects. And what do you think about that? I mean, I'm an editor at one of the journals, and there is a question that asks, have you used any AI in this manuscript? And do you see it as like a positive or negative that people would say yes?
I think this is also like always what people ask me, do you trust it 100% AI? I wouldn't say no, but on the other hand, this technology is there and everyone is using it. We can't hide it. And they're getting much and much more tasks from us. I always do the reference with Google Maps. You trust it, you just put the address and you follow it blind. You would never request a way, you just go with it. And I think this technology will be there, and still I doubt that an AI bot will never be a human. You know, the creativity, what the human has, will never be. This is one big thing that is not there. But let's wait until we have the innovators bots.
Thank you. I would like to make the last question in the interest of time from the online people. Andreas, I saw this one on validation. Maybe you can read it.
Actually, there are two just related to validation. The first one is demos are really cool, but how do you make sure that the chatbot is actually performing the calculation that you requested? And in the same way, the second question is, how do you validate these analysis models? Are there any checks done, or do you only see the figure, and can you see the code behind it?
We can always provide the code. We can always ask the bot to generate also the code behind, and then we do it kind of a double programming way. There's a human who's running the code and matching the outputs. And as I mentioned before, we never just took AI-generated content and give it to the authorities. We don't do that. So we always have, as a human, have the QC the output. There's no way at the moment to just trust them blind.
So, thank you very much. We have some small gifts from Basel for all the speakers. For you, Ercan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again, and we will see Ercan again in the panel, and you also will have the opportunity to talk to him in the coffee break. Great. So our next presentation will be virtual. Cindy and Nikos, can you maybe bring your slides up? So we have two presenters, and they talk about something I've been wondering about for a while, which is using AI for systematic literature reviews, because there are very strict requirements for that. And I'm very pleased that we have Cindy Tong and Nikos Taketsoglu, both from Health Economics and Market Access at J&J. Over to the two of you, please.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us. I'm actually based in the US, so it's very much a privilege to be invited to this meeting. And Nikos is actually based in Greece, and that's why we are presenting virtually today. So first of all, as you heard, we are from J&J MedTech, Health Economics, Market Access. You're probably wondering what we are doing in HEMA, looking at data science and AI. So it is our strong belief with Gen AI and AI in general, we can increase the efficiency of our business processes. And for that, Nikos is going to talk about SLR and then also briefly mention a proof of concept project for value brief generation. So to you, Nikos.
Thank you. Just to check that you can hear me clearly and that you can see my slides, right?
Yes, we can see you. Hear you very well. We can see only Cindy at the moment, but
you cannot see the slides.
No, we can see the slides and we can hear you well. And now we see you.
Okay. So what I want to say is that This is systematic literature review that is in collaboration with Erasmus University, and it's also part of my PhD. It's collaboration with Johnson & Johnson MedTech, right? The department that Cindy is representing. So what we wanted to do, our research scope was twofold. The first one was we want to identify health technology assessment publications that were using prediction models because we want to create a model on our own. But today we're going to discuss about the secondary endpoint, which is we wanted to see if generative AI, and specifically GPT-4, could help with a systematic literature review. The first thing about our search strategy is that we humans chose the database, we humans devised the search terms, but it's very interesting that actually we had GPT-4 suggest additional search terms that many of those were actually added. So that's a first win of incorporating GPT-4 into our systematic literature review. The second part, sorry, all right, was that we identified 2,406 titles and abstracts that were retrieved manually, and then these 972 pages were fed into the bot in 1,500 word chunks. The reason is that, if you have used ever the one ChatGPT or whatever else, that has a limitation of the input. How did we compare GPT's results with our results, the humans? First of all, we have the title and abstract screening phase, the ordinary process for a systematic literature review. Each reviewer assesses the titles and abstracts on their own. Then they need to align together on some conflicts. So perhaps I'm saying yes and my colleague is saying no, and decide what should be included in the full text screening phase, where again, we need to repeat the process and align for the final full text inclusion. Similarly, GPT-4 was a reviewer. It made on its own the decision. It needed to align with one of us, creating an AI and human pool of paper, selection of paper. Then these papers were moved to the full text evaluation, and then we needed to align again. How would we create the benchmark? The benchmark was created actually by combining the inclusions of each selection and resolving the conflicts. So if one cohort was saying yes and the other one was saying no, we needed to reevaluate our decision. We also added a third reviewer in the full text screening phase of the robot, just to check our hypothesis. We believed that GPT-4 might not perform very well in the full text phase, as it might be too much context. And we added that in the benchmark. Finally, although these results are not ready yet, we also had the intern do part of the process to see perhaps you don't need GPT-4, you need just an intern, right? But let's see what the instructions were. The instructions were not the ordinary instructions. We didn't ask it to say, hey, just decide. We used something called a technique that is inspired by the tree of thoughts, chain of thoughts, and self-consistency. Probably they're doing something similar with the O1 now that they have. And if someone wants to read it, there are publications out there. Very simplistically put, okay, just a moment, I'm having some problems. Okay, is that we were having 4 personas. We asked the robot to pretend that it's 4 personas: an HTA expert, a librarian, a statistician, and data science machine learning expert. They needed to first plan what they would do and then execute. In the planning phase, each persona read the input alongside 3 inclusion and 2 exclusion criteria that were set up by us humans. This was copy-pasted. It doesn't matter for our speech today, but it's like what should be excluded, what should be included. Then they needed to devise a plan of how to tackle what should be included or excluded. They needed to critique their own plan, and then based on the critique, create a final combined plan. Why we did all that? It increases, based on the literature, the accuracy of the model. Finally, they needed to to act upon the plan and decide on potential inclusion and exclusion reasons for its title and abstract and for its full text. They didn't still decide if something should be included or excluded as a paper. This was reserved for 3 polymaths, different personas. A polymath is a Greek word meaning people with a multidisciplinary field of knowledge, like Da Vinci, right? And these 3 polymaths needed to act upon the inclusion-exclusion criteria, read again the paper, and rank them from 1 to 5. Why 3 polymaths? Because there is some inherent randomness, and we wanted to control that randomness, and we repeated. We had 3 iterations. The ranked system was from 1 to 5. Only 5 met the inclusion criteria, meaning that it at least met one of the inclusion criteria and none of the exclusion criteria. It's skewed on purpose because the robot tended to be too sensitive, and that's why, let's say, we tweak it a bit. For our surprise, it seems that the GPT-4's decision was not at random. We aligned 91% of the times, or 92% of the times, its decision with humans, although humans aligned with each other a bit better, 95% of the time. The other interesting observation is that 4.5% of the times that human was saying yes and AI was saying no, actually human was convinced after the alignment, some discussion with the robot, to change its original decision. And when human was saying no and AI was saying yes, again, 12.8% of those times, human changed the decision. If we move to the accuracy phase, we're seeing AI had a great accuracy, but the sensitivity was only 45%, while the humans had 69 and 78%. The topic was very broad, so perhaps that's another problem. It was not a clinical topic. However, we're talking about cohorts. We're seeing 77.2 sensitivity versus 94% sensitivity, which is, again, a difference. The interesting piece is that adding an AI retrieved more papers. However, some papers were missed by the 2 humans. That's another observation. If we go to the full text, again, we're seeing that adding an additional human in the full text didn't help with accuracy and sensitivity. So probably most papers were lost in the title and abstract phase. We're seeing a sensitivity 72.5%, and the 2 humans achieved the 96.1%. So it's a big difference, but still 3 papers out of 74 were retrieved only by adding AI. Again, AI on its own had a 67.7% accuracy, but far less compared to a 90% accuracy on average by the humans. What are the key observations here? The key observation is that the SLR topic, of course, was too broad. Perhaps a more clinical topic, we're expecting better accuracy. AI manages, which is a bit scary, to convince human beings, in some cases, to change their point of view. Why? We're thinking that it sticks more to the inclusion-exclusion criteria. We humans tend to be more creative. It helps with some missed articles by humans, and perhaps due to fatigue, and some poorly written abstracts that we really didn't know what to do with them. GPT was managing to understand those. Finally, we believe better refined inclusion-exclusion criteria helps with AI performance. Less is more. And full text GPT-4 outcomes are much worse compared to total and abstract. We're not exactly sure why, though, yet. So can it help? Yes, but not replace a human, and still needs a bit more work. We have a second proof of concept. I'm going to say under 1 minute now. And just to explain, this is a full J&J case, no collaboration this time. We just want to do something similar with a similar technique to see if the value brief can be created for J&J product, and we can semi-automate it using GPT-4. We wanted to create a 10 to 20 pages value brief for internal use, right? We don't want 8 months of legal waiting time, right? Based on nice 1,000 pages evaluation document. So we fed 1,000 pages and we said, create 20 pages. Our vision is to create an end-to-end automated system. You push the button, you provide the 1,000 pages, and develops a value brief for you. That always needs final editing and proof check. So we could say the proof of concept was sort of a success, as the hallucinations were controlled by the prompting methodology we showed earlier, and the process we evaluate for input and output evaluation. A first draft required from human working sorry, I cannot see the slide. Yeah, required 20 less hours working versus 100% in-house in draft, and it's a moderate quality versus a human draft. However, a final draft that it's still on the go would require some hours more, but we're expecting better quality versus a human version as we're doing it in-house versus vendors. Or we, the product owners, know and can do development on our own. So a human review is critical for accuracy, fewer pages but more relevant is of higher quality, and human touch for final version necessary. And we truly believe it's feasible and truly unavoidable. And back to you, Cindy, to share a couple of thoughts.
Thank you, Nikos. So from the two case studies, here are our thoughts. So first of all, we do see the potential. Even for SLR, you see that the performance is not great, right? But we do see the potential, and the not so great, not super great performance actually for us, we think it's a really important lesson. So for example, now if people tell us we can do SLR with 100% accuracy, we are not too sure about that. And Nikos mentioned several times, human involvement is crucial, especially human with domain knowledge. We strongly believe this is crucial. We are not at the point yet that human can be replaced. And second thing, as you see on the slide, prompting is very important. Nikos used very creative and innovative prompting technique, which is necessary to help eliminate hallucination. And we all know hallucination is a potentially big problem. As I mentioned, we strongly believe, and this is probably our biggest conclusion, Gen AI, LLMs, they are not capable to replace a human yet. So I think this summarizes our talk, and we're happy to discuss any thoughts that you have.
Thank you very much, Cindy and Nikos. I'm very pleased about your conclusion. We have very little time. Is there a quick question? There's one from the very back.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Maybe quick question, when you say that your AI can manage to convince the human responders, could you elaborate how you did that? And was actually, the responder, the human, aware that the opposite outcome is coming from an AI or not, basically? Is it blinded or is it, sort of open label?
No, it's not blind. We really discussed with the robot in the chat with it, and we're saying we have a different prompting technique, asking why did you decide to include or exclude? Could you convince me? And then says, yeah, the inclusion criteria were that. That's why we should include. And then I might say, for example, I was one of the reviewers. No, I disagree with that because it's too narrow of a scope. Interestingly enough, one of the reasons is fatigue, and the other one is that it's a machine and it sticks to the inclusion-exclusion criteria. It was right.
Thank you very much. I'd like to stick to time, so a big thank you again, and we see both Cindy and Nikos at the end. Really appreciate it. Also that you benchmark, I think it was really nice. And with that, I introduce our next speaker, Sheye Abogunrin from Roche, who is talking about the related topic. He's an access evidence lead at Roche and also works heavily on this AI transformation for quite a while. Over to you, Sheye.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. Apologies, I have a cold, but I'll try to be as clear as possible. Okay, so my name is Shea Abogari. I'm a global access evidence lead at Roche, and my job is to figure out a way to implement artificial intelligence for our global access organization. A little bit of a disclaimer. And so before we dive into AI, oh, my time is up. All right. So before we dive into AI, I'd like to share a quick story with you about something that might resonate with a lot of people in this room. So I have over 15 years conducting systematic reviews, and I have led over 200 reviews. But sometime in 2020, which we might all remember vaguely now, since we're back to our new normal. During the COVID pandemic, I was saddled with the task of leading a systematic review for treatments that were evolving as of that time. And as you can imagine, we had the task of gathering evidence very quickly in a short time. The additional complexity during that period was that, the rate at which the evidence was being generated was probably quicker than what humans could do. And so what that meant was that we had so many things that we had to navigate at that very period. And there were late nights and working with multiple applications. And it probably just meant that it was time for a change and not, for us to be doing things in the traditional way. So in Rush, we started thinking about how to use AI algorithms to do this work better and in a very different way, in a more efficient way. And we started thinking about how to, evolve those AI algorithms into what everyone in this room probably knows as AI agents. Okay, so AI is a key enabler for the future of HTA. I think everyone in this room agrees with that. But why is it so? So HTA is becoming increasingly complex. Like we have EU HTA right on our necks now. And this means that we need to be able to respond faster than whatever it is that we've done in the past. And this probably also means that we can't keep doing things the usual way with huge dependence on humans. The other thing is that HTA processes involve a massive amount of data that we have to process and prepare for our affiliates, like the different Roche organizations that work outside of the global company. And lastly, AI agents can help us by speeding up the process for conducting a lot of this work. So you might be wondering, how do we move from prompting as it is, like as many people are aware of today, to a world or an era where we have autonomous AI agents? And so there are 4 steps. They're slightly different from what Ekan showed earlier on, but there's a very big overlap between what I'm showing now. So we have chatbots and analytics, which many people in the room, right, are familiar with. But then we move to the next stage where we have agents that are conducting specific tasks, and we call this like specialization for all of these AI agents. And then the next phase is to create assistants and co-pilots. And lastly, we have a group of agents that can work by themselves in an autonomous environment. Of course, they will still need humans. So what is an AI agent? And an AI agent is simply an autonomous software system that can perform a specific task using AI and machine learning algorithms that operate with minimal human intervention. That is very important because we still need humans to be involved in that process. And then they can also help us generate actionable insights. And AI agents have their own swag, they have their own personality, they have background knowledge, they have the chance to be able to reflect on activities that have been conducted in the past, and they also have short and long-term memory, which is crucial for the work that we do. Because today, if we look at the prompt-based system, when we use ChatGPT out of the box, the memory is quite poor. So, if we think about how we move from where we are today to where we're going to be in the future, it means that there's going to be a massive switch from being a traditional doer, and there'll be an intermediary step where we have standalone applications that actually are not autonomous, fully autonomous in nature. And then in the far future, we're going to have a situation where we have all of these agents stringed together in a way that they can perform autonomously. Now, this is not all new because we have robotic process automation that everyone in this room does in some way. If you're a statistician, you try to make your work as easy as possible by writing scripts that you can leverage and re-leverage and probably even automate. So the major difference between the introduction of these AI agents into the picture is that there is a self-learning component now in it. Now, my example is going to be about systematic reviews as well. So if you look at this image, these are like key steps. There are key steps on here that you have to go through in order to be able to conduct a systematic literature review. And there is a potential to deploy an agent at every single step. That last step where I say dissemination of research efforts is intentional because it's completely out of our hands. It sits with the publishers and the editors of journals and all of that. Okay, so what could AI agents for systematic reviews look like? So I imagine that based on the work that we're doing and based on the work that we're doing in Roche at the moment, like the idea is to have a setting where you have an agent manager which supervises individual agents that are specialized on certain tasks. So this task could be, for example, text summary and generation. It could be designing such strategy. That's really important, as we saw earlier on, right? Because the agent needs to be able to query multiple data sources that are outside of the Roche environment. And also, we could have another agent that deals with such strategy implementation. That's also very crucial because, one can design the search, but the other one must be able to authenticate these external sources to say that, okay, this search that was designed actually works for the situation, for the specific research question. We could also have another agent, for example, like responsible for record classification, one for full text screening, and then another one for extraction. I say clinical here because this is what our proof of concept is based upon, and one that conducts quality assessment and risk of bias, and one that is dedicated to designing tables and charts and plots. And then, all of these agents, if we imagine how they can be stringed together, like after agent 8, in this case, completes its work, it can then be passed on to that first agent who is a specialist in pulling information together and creating a document that can be shared with external stakeholders. And then at the last step or the last two steps, we have a QC step where one agent who is trained specifically for that to reflect back on the work that's been done historically by humans to double check what this eight agents in the initial steps have created to just ensure that it meets the human requirements that I have set out for it. And then lastly, this information is passed on to the agent manager. Agent manager informs me work is ready. So I like that example that we saw earlier on where we said, okay, we try to do things that will be done in 4 hours and like 5 minutes. I imagine that in this world where our POC is deployed, work that takes us, 2 years or 1 year, many times, we can do it in a matter of weeks. One important thing that I would flag as I went through the slides, you probably have seen that there are challenges that I've highlighted for every single step. There are probably many other challenges, but these are key ones that we have to navigate as an organization as we go through the implementation of this proof of concept. Okay, so there is a clear benefit to implementing AIs for the kind of work we do in Roche, but humans are still crucial. In the process, we still need them. I think that will bring a smile to Marcel's face. So we still need people, we still need ourselves. And like we saw from the slide earlier on from Erkan, that, the NVIDIA CEO says that it's not humans that are going to be replaced. So I imagine that in our desired future, what is going to happen is that we're just going to have new, more sophisticated tools to do the work we do today in a much better way. And caution is really important when as we think through this process of introducing AI agents. Caution is really important. A few other points are that there are big things like licensing requirements with journals and things like that. We allow even to deploy machine learning algorithms on these full text papers that we get from data providers like Elsevier or Springer Nature and all of that. And the authentication of users because the agents will be set up to query multiple systems that Roche might not even have control over. So a couple of other things are that, there's the issue of data privacy and GDPR compliance, as well as resistance to adoption. Now, why are agents important for the industry? They're important for three things, I think. There are probably other reasons, but it will enable faster market access for us. Secondly, it will improve the accuracy and consistency of the work we do, because humans tire out when they're doing the work, and computers never tire out, except maybe there's a virus on it. And lastly, there is an opportunity for enhanced resource efficiency. In conclusion, so AI agents can improve the efficiency of routine tasks that we do today by automating them and having a life of its own, or semi-life, so to say. Secondly, it can give us a competitive edge. As an organization, we will be able to benefit from faster market access. And lastly, I believe that the future of HTA in the pharma industry will be AI-driven. So as you walk out through this door today, I invite you to think of ways in which you can deploy agents for the work you do on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shea. Very much enjoyed that. We only have time for one question, and I'd like to take one from. There are none. Is there anything in the room? Ercan? Wait.
Yeah. A quick question regarding which platform do you use for the agents?
Okay, so it's a really good question. So on the slides, I identified that we will use multiple algorithms, because we have seen that the algorithms perform better for different tasks. And we're still trying to design the Roche in-house platform that we would leverage for that purpose. But a lot of it is going to come from Galileo OS.
Thank you very much again. I will see you in the So with that, let me introduce the last speaker from the first session. It's Saryant Subramaniam. He's a senior expert data scientist at Novartis. He's been working a lot on deep learning for imaging, and he's also presenting something from that space. Over to you.
All right. Thanks, Marcel, for the introduction. Okay. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here to present on behalf of the team collaboration we did with the Oxford Big Data Institute on a project where we explored the application of AI in the field of synthetic data. Now I have to disappoint you, because this project was done around 3 years ago. So as such, there's no involvement of LLMs or anything. But nonetheless, the topics or the questions we try to address are still highly relevant. So as was already mentioned a few times now already, in the recent years, we have seen quite this surge of these big, very capable models, most notably, of course, ChatGPT. And deep learning AI moved from applications specific to academia or industry to something that the general population is aware of or might even use on a daily basis. Now, if we ask ourselves what drove this transition, there is not necessarily a single specific big scientific breakthrough, but instead there were multiple smaller inventions that collectively drove the phenomenon of scaling, which I would argue is the main reason why we see suddenly all those big capable models. So what do I mean by scaling? So here I have a figure from a paper that investigates scaling laws in large language models. On the y-axis, you see the test loss, so essentially how well does your model perform on unseen data. And you see that we have three figures here where we see scaling in three different ways. In the first one, compute, we just look at scaling in the sense of how much compute resources do we have. In the middle one, we see the dataset size. So if we scale our training data, how does the model improve? And in the last one, we see the number of parameters. So if we scale the model in size. And if you look at the x-axis, you see that the scaling continues across multiple orders of magnitudes. And this wasn't obvious from the beginning, and it's very much an empirical finding. And it's also the reason why we get something capable as ChatGPT from the simple tasks of predicting the next word. So why do I talk about this? So of course, the immediate question is, okay, how can we make use of those recent developments in the medical field? And I want to argue here that we have some unique challenges when it comes to scaling, especially in I want to focus especially on the middle one, namely the data set, scaling in data. And it is true that we do have tons of medical data on the world. Historically, we collect every day new data on different sites, trial sites, hospitals, etc. However, in the medical domain, we often have the issue that the data is restricted in use. The use of the data is restricted because of privacy concerns. So a prime example would be, for example, if you collect data in a clinical trial, you can't just easily use that data outside of the context of this clinical trial, because usually the patient didn't agree to that. So how do we work around this? There are multiple approaches. A common one is anonymization, where we take the original data and we just basically remove or modify potentially sensitive information from the original data, and then basically share a modified version of the original data set. Now, the problem here is that often you modify or remove important features which might be medically relevant, and also this is quite a manual, or can be quite a manual and tedious process. Another avenue is federated learning, where we would have multiple parties who jointly train a model without actually sharing the data between them. However, this kind of requires quite an elaborate technical setup. And the one approach I want to focus today is synthetic data. So could we kind of have, take the original data and train a model that creates synthetic data that looks very similar to the original data and includes all the important medical features, but without including any potential patient information. And why is that useful? Because you could then just take this synthesized version of the original data and take that to share with third parties or train other downstream models without having to worry about privacy concerns. Okay, so in our use case specifically, we looked at data we collected in a clinical cosmetics study, namely 3D MRI images. And more specifically, we looked at vertebra units. So basically, as you see in the left picture, vertebra units in the spine. And we wanted to train a generative model that essentially should give us realistic looking MRI images, but purely synthesized. And the approach we went for the generative model are GANs, so generative adversarial networks. So on a very high level, how this works is that you have two networks. One network is tasked with generating fake images, and the other network, the discriminator, is tasked with telling fake images from real ones apart. And then you jointly train them in almost like a competition. And the generator tries to basically fool the discriminator. And after successful training, you end up at a place where the generator creates images that look quite realistic. So in our case, this is our what came out after a successful training. So on the left-hand side, you see real MRI images, and on the right-hand side, you see synthetic images. So these are vertebral units from patients that don't actually exist. And we actually used a variation of the gun I just explained, where you also can condition on additional parameters. So here we also conditioned on the position of the vertebral unit in the spine. Now, if you just look at it, it looks like, okay, cool, this seems to work very well, but as a non-expert, as me, it's hard to really tell, how realistic is it really? How well does the conditioning on the position work, etc. So it would be interesting to see a more quantitative measure of the results. And for that, we did two evaluations. One thing we did is we used UMAP embedding. So UMAP is basically a dimensionality reduction approach where we just take the image and project it into a lower dimensional space. And then you just look at those vectors in the space. And you can see that there are three very distinct clusters according to the position in the spine. So this conditioning seems to work quite well. But most importantly, you can see so the darker shades are the synthetic samples, and the lighter shades are the real samples. And you can see that the distribution in the embedding space is covered very similarly between the two cases, which makes the point that the synthetic and real ones are very close to each other. Another thing we did was we basically trained two separate classifiers. And we trained the first classifier only on synthetic data, and the second classifier only on real data. And then we compared the performance of those two classifiers on unseen real data. So basically, this shows that when you doesn't really so what we showed was that those two classifiers performed very similarly, which makes the point that, hey, the synthetic dataset can actually serve as a drop-in replacement for the real dataset. Yes, now to privacy, which is a quite tricky problem, right? So here we only consider a scenario where we share this a version of the synthetic dataset with a third party. So we don't worry about sharing, for example, the model itself or anything, which kind of limits the attack scenarios we have to worry about. And also, what do we actually mean, or how do we define privacy? Privacy here. So we frame it as through the question of, can an attacker find traces of the of the patients in the train? Sorry, can an attacker, if given, for example, a set of samples, can he tell whether those samples were used in the training of the model or not? And for that, we look at pairwise attacks, so essentially what I just said. And here we just looked at the L2, so Euclidean distance between candidate samples and the samples in the synthetic data set that we might share in a scenario. And then we showed that it doesn't really matter if that candidate sample was actually used in the training or not. The distribution of the Euclidean distances is the same. So there's nothing meaningful an attacker could say. Another one is these so-called distribution attacks, where we just try to identify clusters of synthetic images around real images. So here we see again the embedding space. And this one is quite a bit harder, and also not surprising that it's difficult to kind of take into account, because in principle, a gun is exactly trained to replicate the distribution in the original data set. So it's not surprising that we see actually clusters of synthetic samples around real training samples. However, this can be mitigated. The risk of this can be mitigated by limiting the size of the dataset, synthetic dataset you actually share, or by carefully sampling what kind of samples you share. Cool. So for the end, just 2 points. So what are the limitations of this work? First of all, there is no intrinsic privacy guarantee in the approaches I discussed, because the privacy is validated. The privacy conservation is validated in post, and there are methods like differential privacy, where you basically inject noise in the training of models, for example, that would guarantee you actually privacy. And also gun trainings are infamously quite unstable, and there are different approaches, for example, diffusion models, which are quite popular right now, that could give us a more stable way to train a generative model. And yeah, with that, I'm already at the end, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Sayant, I saw one quick question in the chat, which is how much training data do you need? How many MRIs do you really need to do this?
Yeah, so in this case, we used, I think, 10,000 10,000 samples for the training, yeah, or on this scale, yeah.
Okay. There's one question.
Yeah, thanks. I like the approach of the synthetic data. Taking it one step further, you're now talking about, I mean, not very sensitive to privacy pictures. If we think about dermatology, for example, do you think that would be a bigger issue, for example? Because I think it's easier to identify somebody's face or arm or skin, maybe also by tattoos, as compared to an X-ray. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, it depends on the application, even though technically also an X-ray MRI, like you could in principle assign it to a specific patient. But I would expect that this approach should also work in your case. However, you have to be probably more careful on how you evaluate it. And yeah, I guess it depends on the application, but on the other hand, I think it's also quite similar. Yeah.
Can you comment on the performance of your method by sample size? So how much does it scale when the sample size goes up? How is the performance if you work with low sample sizes? This is one of the questions from
For the training?
For the MRI training data, yeah.
Yeah, for the training. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just thinking compared to other generative models, if the guns use particularly more samples. I'm actually not so sure how this compares to other methods, but here we use around 10,000, and to be honest, I don't remember like if that was the cutoff where we first seen nice results or not. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually, this last question perfectly leads to the first talk after the coffee break by Harald Binder, which talks about doing work on using AI in small data sampling settings. And with that, I would like to thank all the speakers from the first session very much again. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. And we will now do here in